Okay, so Spider-Man 94 just did something insane. Now, yes, this comic has been getting a lot of criticism. A lot of fans don't actually like it, saying that it doesn't capture the essence of the 90s show the same way the show actually did when it aired. Despite it being written by DeMatteis, one of the most notorious Spider-Man writers of all time, people just aren't vibing with this comic. However, issue 2 does something really crazy, and I think it's worth reading. We kick off this comic with the growth of another Kaine clone. Essentially, if you haven't been following the comic already, we found out in issue 1 that Kaine was actually a clone of Morlun. Now, in the original Spider-Man mythos from the 616 universe, Kaine is actually a clone of Peter Parker, and he was created during the Clone Saga. Now, most people will know of Ben Reilly, who is also a clone of Peter Parker. He also currently shows up in the 616 universe as Chasm, but not many people actually know of Kaine. If you're a diehard Spider-Man fan and you followed the comics for a long time, then you will know of Kaine. However, in this universe, Kaine is actually a clone of Morlun. Morlun then goes on this speech at the start of the issue about how Kaine is disposable, and it's this proper evil cliche speech. The way they present Kaine later on in the issue made it seem like this clone of Kaine might actually have a bigger role in the story to come, as the clone from issue 1 is already dead. There's a massive emphasis put on the fact that Kaine can remember past lives as well, and about how much he hates Morlun, but he just can't put his finger on why. So definitely, I think this clone is going to be a bigger part of the story moving forward, and I definitely think he's going to have some kind of revenge arc against Morlun. However, while we are on the Morlun stuff, I do want to take a quick moment to just talk about this sort of sequence. I do feel like this series definitely has a little bit of a dialogue issue. I kind of let it slide in the first issue because maybe there were a few teething problems, and JMD maybe just needed time to adjust to writing and the voices from the 90s show, but the dialogue really doesn't pick up in this issue, and a lot of the time, if I'm being truly honest, it's really clunky and exposition heavy. And I know what JMD wants to do, I know what he means. He wants to get the point across that, you know, Kaine is a clone and Morlun thinks they're disposable, but of course, even if they are clones, they are still people inside. That's going to be the whole story, I imagine, with Kaine, but it just seems like JMD's trying to sort of force that down our throats. Like, for example, we know how Morlun treats these clones. We saw in the first issue, if they fail him, he literally kills them. So we already know the way he feels about them. We know that Morlun believes they're disposable just by context clues alone. We don't need a whole 2 pages of evil monologue to figure out what the reader could have interpreted. It's messy, and like I said, it feels like the story is being force-fed to me. In comparison to the ASM comics, it's actually night and day. Like, Joe Kelly's writing has been on point. And it pains me to say it because I love JMD as a writer, I love his Spider-Man stuff, but he's just not hitting in the dialogue department. As we move throughout the story, we meet back with Spider-Man, who reflects on the events of the last issue and the fallout he had with Anna Watson when he's attacked by Grizzly, the Kangaroo, the Gibbon, and Leapfrog. And yes, for those of you who do not know, yes, these are real villains from Marvel Comics. I am not kidding. The vibe was definitely for them to feel goofy, and to be fair, it's quite a funny interaction seeing Spider-Man sort of mock them as he fights them. When one of them actually gets a hit on him, it genuinely catches him off guard. And just before Spider-Man could wrap up, Morlun swoops down and starts fighting them himself. But before we can get an explanation to whatever the hell is going on, we cut to MJ and Anna Watson. And this section of the story and the few panels that MJ does have with Aunt May, which we will discuss in a minute, are by far my favorite parts of this story so far. Basically, during this whole sequence, Anna Watson points out that the way Peter treats MJ is wrong. MJ and us know that Peter is Spider-Man, but as it's alluded to, Anna Watson is actually kind of right. Despite Peter being Spider-Man, MJ has been pushed to the sidelines. It's also worth noting that even though we don't know how Peter found MJ after the events of Season 5, we are told that it was a long and drawn out process, and they've been through a lot to get to this point. And now, after everything that's happened with Peter being Spider-Man and everything sort of going back to normal, MJ kind of feels left behind. And that's where she is sort of at in this story. And I imagine when we go back and we look at the events of how Peter found MJ after the events of Season 5 with Madam Web, we'll start to sort of piece this story together a lot more. And that's why I'm really excited about this. And that's why the MJ stuff is sort of my favorite thing about this book at the moment. There is this inner conflict inside of Mary Jane Watson where she feels like Anna is right about Peter, even though he's Spider-Man. We then cut back to Peter and Morlun as Morlun continues to fight the villains. I've no idea why he did this. Apparently it's because Spider-Man isn't worthy of them. Either way, he goes on to fight them, intentionally snaps one of their spines in half, and then tries to fight Spider-Man. Now, you see, my problem with this is I don't really understand why Kaine is created then, if Morlun can just go and try and find Spider-Man himself. The whole reason why Kaine came after Peter in the last issue and caused that whole ruckus at that family reunion was because Morlun was too weak to find and fight Spider-Man himself. The whole reason why Morlun has sent Kaine after Spider-Man is because Spider-Man's life force is the strongest and Morlun needs to feed. Either way, it says at the end of the comic that Morlun's perspective will be explained during the 3rd issue, but something just doesn't really seem right with me here. Maybe there is more to the story, but it kind of seems like a little bit of a plot hole. During this battle, we cut to MJ at Aunt May's house to discuss the events of the last issue. And this is where we get the massive what the heck moment in this issue. During the conversation between the two, Aunt May says Anna was out of line for saying what she did about Peter, but also says that Anna wasn't wrong about him. May expresses her own concerns about the way Peter lives his life and about how secretive he is, and how she misses the days when he was a kid, when things were just a lot simpler with her, Peter, and Uncle Ben. MJ tells her that's just how Peter is, and May says no, it's because he's Spider-Man. What? That is crazy. It's a ballsy move, but you know what? Fair play. If this is the way this story's going, then yes, please. Despite this book not being the best so far, I did not see this twist coming, and I actually kinda like it. I think we're at this point in the 90s show history where this twist kinda makes sense. I don't really like the twist where Aunt May finds out about Peter's secret identity too early in his Spider-Man career. For example, in the MCU, I was not a fan of Aunt May finding out that early. I think that was a wrong move, and I think it was a little bit of a mistake on the writer's parts to sort of have Aunt May find out that early. I think it takes away certain stakes and certain tensions when it comes to the Spider-Man character, especially when he has to explain to Aunt May why he's not going to school, not getting grades, why he's coming home late. I think it takes that part of the character away. But also later on in his career, I think it could be a really good way of adding stakes. Like when we've told the story of Peter explaining to Aunt May why he's home late a million times, we can then move on to Aunt May worrying about why Peter's not coming home late because he's Spider-Man. And that's the point I think we're at in this story, so that's why I like this twist and that's why I think it works. So yes, I approve of this. This is great, and it's also going to be really interesting to see how MJ reacts in the next issue too. We then finish off the issue with another twist. During the battle with Morlun and Spider-Man, none other than Kraven the Hunter shows up. Why? How? Who knows? The last time we actually saw Kraven was during the Stalker episode in the show, where Calypso turned into a monster called the Stalker via the same serum that gave Kraven his powers. Spider-Man and the Black Cat presumed Kraven to be the Stalker at first. However, it was then revealed that it was Calypso, and Kraven was just trying to save her the whole time. Also, it's worth noting that Kraven at this point in the show was actually more of an ally to Spider-Man than an enemy. And that's because the last notable appearance before this episode was actually during the Man-Spider arc, where Kraven helped turn Peter back into his normal human form. Kraven was one of the characters in the show that underwent a lot of character development, from a selfish, narcissistic hunter to, in the end, helping save Spider-Man's life and Calypso's. My biggest worry is that they character assassinate him in the next issue and he just becomes a villain again. I really don't want that to be the case, because Kraven is actually probably one of my favorite characters from the 90s show, or at least one of my favorite villains. But we'll just have to wait and see. Subscribe so you do not miss my review of issue 3, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care and peace.